Welcome to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about government and innovation. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and the music created by a New Orleans jazz icon Leroy Jones. Find this and other Leroy Jones tunes wherever you get your music. In his 2002 book, The Rise of the Creative Class, and later in the 2005 book, The Flight of the Creative Class, The New Global Competition for Talent, Richard Florida introduced the 3 T's: technology, talent, and tolerance. His core argument is that creativity is the nourishment of new economic growth, and in order to nurture and grow creativity, you need the 3 T's: technology to serve as a platform, talent to do the creative process, and tolerance in the society to allow the talent to flourish. Since then, the mid-2000s, the word talent has become synonymous with tech workers, sometimes meaning any tech worker, even a worker with teachable skills that anyone could learn in, let's say, like a community college, fairly easily. But I'd like to go back to discuss the word in its original sense, where talent and creativity go hand in hand. In my work with deep tech, be it AI, life sciences, quantum, you name it, some of the skills that are required, not all, but the critical ones, are at such levels that it takes years to master them. Deep tech industries need talent, and they cannot wait for years for a 100% homegrown workforce. To paraphrase, I'll generalize a little bit. America has the money, the startups, the research, but they need more talent to keep up the economies of scale of their innovation machine. Europe has the research, the legacy industries, but they need more talent to turn that research into products, startups, to attract the money. Japan, South Korea, Canada, Australia, every country has their reason to attract more talent. So where is that talent? Who are they? And how to get them to come and work for you? My guest today is Ceri Koski. She is a partner at WR Immigration in Denver, Colorado. Ms. Koski partners with clients to create and implement strategic and innovative workforce immigration solutions. Based on their particular challenges and goals, she helps employers create effective immigration programs. Her work also involves strategizing immigration program management for organizations of all sizes, including through corporate reorganization, ramping up, and reductions in force. She engages companies throughout the United States and globally, ranging from managing immigration programs on behalf of legacy multinational enterprises to assisting with business travel and work authorization. As a leading immigration practitioner, Ms. Koski is listed in Chambers USA and Super Lawyers. Welcome to Deep Pockets, Ceri.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Petra. Yes, I'm Ceri Koski. My full name is Ceridwen. It's Welsh. It's my great-grandmother's name, but I go by Ceri. It looks like Siri, but it's not Siri. Everybody's iPhones will blow up. We say Siri, it's Ceri. And thank you so much. I've always believed in professional success and community service aren't mutually exclusive. And serving my community has always been an organic process. Growing up, I was surrounded by my family, and they placed a high value on service and heritage. My mom was a nurse, and she used to take me to clinics where she was volunteering or interning. I got ahead. Sorry, I got ahead.
You did get ahead, because I was gonna mention
Yeah,
to our
so
listeners
sorry.
that we had that. That's okay. So let me just interrupt you to tell our listeners that we do have a bit of history together. So we met in New York City. I think it was 2011, 2010, 2011, around that time. And because I just want to tell the story before we really get into your full background. So I was fresh off the boat. So I just come from Helsinki, and I was looking for an immigration lawyer for myself, and for my then fiance, now husband. And I remember meeting you. I think it's now the W Hotel on Union Square. I don't think I don't know if it was the W. And
Yeah, it
I
was
just
the W. I remember
was
that.
it?
I remember it very clearly because Ismo had his nest was right around there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the accelerator. So I was so excited. I walked into the lobby. I was excited of getting all the paperwork done so I could, start my own company and be in the US, start the company in the US and stay in the US myself. And you were there with me and Ismo, and you did all that paperwork. Then you got us through from the working visas, then to green cards, and all the way to both of our citizenships, which happened just a few years ago. So we've been on this journey for a long time. And then we ended up living in Colorado at the same time, which was quite amazing, just by coincidence. And actually what happened in Colorado, it was through your connections, we also found our home. So not only did you create our citizenships, you also found us a home in Arvada. And that was really amazing. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, let's get back to the story, because the thing that impressed me then and impresses me now is how you take care of your community, which I felt personally 15 years ago. And you do a lot of work with Finnish Americans and Scandinavian Americans, and you volunteer at organizations. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit more about that. But at the same time, you've had a stellar career as an attorney, as a shareholder, and a partner in these prominent law firms. So continue, please. How did you do it, and how do you keep doing it?
Thank you so much. So yeah, as I was saying, community service and professional success, I think, go hand in hand, especially as an attorney, because we're actually required to do pro bono hours as part of our license requirements. And in addition to that, I grew up in Southern Arizona, and my mom did her nurse training there, and she used to take me to clinics, to health clinics, where she was interning and volunteering. But then, where sort of my ethnic identity comes into it is, I grew up summering in the lakes and saunas of Upper Michigan and Northern Minnesota, and I actually studied Finnish, for 10 plus years at Salolampi, the Finnish language village. And although my Finnish language is very sparse, embarrassingly so. It doesn't sound like a foreign language to my ears. It sounds like a native language to my ears. So when I hear it, it just sounds like normal, like English. And also my stepmom and sister are from Finland and Sweden. So perhaps I have a stronger ethnic identity than others of my generation. So when I moved to New York City from Arizona, where I went to law school, when I moved to New York City in 2006 to start my legal career, I was naturally drawn to socialize in the Finnish community and eventually to do business within the Nordic community. And so I began my career doing business immigration at a global firm, at the largest global immigration firm, and assisting with very repetitive green card petitions. It was the perfect way to build my foundation. But soon I was working with numerous Finnish companies that were expanding their footprint in the U.S. and helping them to secure intracompany transfer visas, which is like the classic startup or U.S. market entry visa, and e-trader visas, as well as O1s for entrepreneurs. And then I also developed a practice assisting creative professionals, which I love, working with designers and illustrators, and, the Finns are really known for that. So that's really exciting for me. So over the years, while building my career, I really maintained and was actively involved with Nordic organizations, which I still am, chambers of commerce, foundations. And it's really a pleasure for me to work with innovative companies that are expanding in the U.S. market and changing the landscape of their product lines. Nordic companies are known for their technology and design, and for me, contributing to the success of these companies is incredibly gratifying. And more than that, learning about the world through their innovation has been fascinating, and it's honestly been a privilege. So I feel like I'm more well versed in cutting edge technology than the average American, because I assist the movers and shakers from Nordic countries. So it's really a privilege and an honor, and that's why I do it. Because I get to learn and I get to be a part of it.
Yeah. That is so inspiring, and I can attest to everything that you've just said. Okay, so let's talk more about your current role. So you said in the introduction we said you help American companies to hire the talent they need internationally, and you help these companies to craft and manage their own immigration programs, solutions, and strategies. So can you tell us what types of companies you work with? Maybe you can give us some names as well if they're not confidential. And what do these company programs mean in practice?
Sure. Yeah. So I do have the duty of confidentiality, so I can't share names, although some of it's public information, so anybody can go into the Department of Labor disclosure and look it up if they're really curious. But in my current role, I have the privilege of working with a really broad spectrum of companies, from agile startups to well-established enterprise multinational companies that have been doing business for decades. Many of these companies are on the forefront of innovation. For example, in network communications, e-commerce, energy, semiconductors, logistics, and cybersecurity. They're not simply chasing trends. They're charting new territories, and so they need the very best at international talent. When I first engage a company, I meet with their leadership and their HR teams to clearly establish their objectives and talent acquisition. This is really about talent acquisition, primarily for enterprise companies, for companies that aren't expanding in the U.S. market. That's different, right? Because they're not doing talent acquisition. They're coming to the U.S. to expand. But for U.S. companies that are looking for talent, they want to know what factors come into that plan. And so for those companies that are expanding in the U.S. market, it typically means that they're transferring, one or two high-level managers or specialists to ramp up their U.S. business. So in either of these situations, I audit the business, right? Because we have to make the case to the government in any petition that this worker is needed. And these are regulatory filings. They're like tax filings, they're like SEC filings, they're like patent applications. I think that's one thing to remember, is that these are regulatory filings. So I actually have to audit the business. It's not a superficial petition. But I provide advice and counsel in the development phase of companies, for those companies that are expanding in the U.S. market, so that they can meet their business benchmarks, so that they can transfer additional people. For the larger enterprise companies, their talent acquisition programs involve recruiting new college graduates often, some of which are foreign born. And again, it's that talent acquisition. And those individuals that are foreign born require visa sponsorship. And so, we are always looking at the timing of onboarding those people. Oftentimes they need H-1B visas, so we're putting them into the H-1B lottery. And that is my life right now. It is heavy H-1B lottery season. The lottery opens on March 7th, closes on March 24th. So, we're always considering timelines. We're always considering when to start green card sponsorship. There's no one size fits all approach. Working with an organization, a company, whether it be, a 20,000 employee company, a 50,000 employee company, or a two-person company, is always a collaborative step-by-step process that ensures that the business is successful at expansion or drawing the best talent. It's a life cycle. And I've had the honor of partnering with high profile tech companies, and it's always a collaborative approach. We want to establish sustainable models, and what that means is creating a dynamic policy, right? I mean, we don't want to create a policy that is highly detailed and with a lot of minutia, because that is a rigid policy that won't flex in times of change. Like right now is a very, very rapidly changing environment. And so we need key principles in an immigration policy that flex with the times. The types of companies that I help are household names, but also companies that you've never heard of. And that's what makes it fun for me, and that's what keeps me sharp, right? Is that
Yeah.
I'm helping the full spectrum.
Wow, that is so interesting to hear. It's so rare to get this insight into how these international companies or national, in your case, operate. And also, thank you for the policy insight as well. That was very, very good feedback. Okay, you mentioned the regulatory filings, how you need to justify to the government why these companies need to hire international talent. And I have been talking about deep technologies, and sometimes these technologies that I talk about, like a quantum, they have a dual use role, which means they can be used for either civilian or military use. And as you said, we are living, like, we're in a turmoil, geopolitical. Everything is being rooted up from, everything seems to be upside down. So in the US, these dual uses are regulated under what they call the export controls. Have you had any cases with your clients where they would be working on these dual use technologies and they would need to find international talent? And how would a case like this unfold?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So these technologies are protected, right? I mean, they're protected from espionage, right? I mean, we
Mm.
don't in the United States we don't want these dual use technologies to get into the wrong hands, and so we have license requirements. We have ITAR and ER license requirements for export controls, so that so that foreign agents can't get their
Mm.
hands on them. It's very basic, and so in my line of work, what you're referring to is on the I-129 petition form, which is the primary form used to prepare all non-immigrant visas. For example, H-1B, H-1B1, L-1, O-1. The employer must answer a question in connection with Export Administration Regulations, or EAR, or International Traffic in Arms Regulations, ITAR, and whether a license is required for the foreign national because they have regulated technology and technical data, like you said, that dual use technology. Now, I have had very few H-1B cases that I have handled where a license has been required because those positions are actually, you know, have additional regulatory action and they get walled off, right? I mean,
Oh, okay.
employers are not sponsoring
Yeah.
those types of positions. For example, the Department of Defense contracts actually have citizenship and residence requirements for those
Hmm.
positions. So just generally, they're not the type of positions that are sponsored for visas because they do have access to that sensitive technology. So just as a matter of, um,
Yeah.
I guess I would say common sense, but I've been in this field for 20 years, so it's just, because they're highly sensitive, and because they have extra license requirements, employers just aren't going to go to the trouble of doing that. And also, they're typically in connection with government contracts, federal contracts, where foreign nationals wouldn't necessarily be privy to that anyway because of those contract clauses.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay, so you said you work with American companies who are hiring domestically and international companies who are expanding into America. But what about American companies if they want to send their American employees to other countries, either as expats or as permanently? Can you give us an overview of this? Where would they typically go? What type of capacity or role have you worked with these? And has there been any? Have you seen any changes in recent years? Americans going abroad to work.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so most multinational companies that are truly global, and it's interesting because I work with a lot, like I said, household name large companies, and there are some companies that are regulated, for example, in energy or telecommunications. And so they're not global. They do not transfer people because they need all of their data, their product line to remain in the United States. So they do not move people around because they can't because of regulations. But then there are other types of businesses that have global rotation programs,
Mm.
and they're moving people around as part of professional development programs. Other other companies have people driven by business need, and then a few companies actually accommodate employee-driven relocation requests. My firm has a global immigration department, and when there is an outbound assignment, the same steps are taken to secure visa sponsorship from a pre-hire assessment to non-immigrant sponsorship to resident permits, as with the U.S. context. Diplomatic relations confer a certain amount of reciprocity. So there are some foreign visa programs that are very similar to U.S. visa programs. And for example, intercompany transfer visas are common globally. We confer the same requirements on those as those countries confer on us, so to speak. However, each country has their own unique requirements. For example, certain countries have exit visa requirements, which, that's I totally unknown to me. That is like exit visa requirements. That blows my mind.
They need a visa to exit, so they can't exit. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I'm so grateful for my global partner, Audrey Lustgarten, in my firm, who shepherds these issues, and she's an expert. I can just call her up and say, Audrey, please can you jump in and handle this global? And I have several clients that have these global programs. And during COVID, we saw an expansion of digital nomad programs in popular destination countries, destination countries like in the Caribbean and
Exactly.
other
Yeah.
popular vacation locations really expanded these digital nomad visas. And the U.S. doesn't have a similar program at all. We have the visitor visa, the ESTA. But one thing I'll say about those digital nomad programs is that most companies typically limit the amount of time that an employee can work remotely to about 30 days. This is because once you go beyond a certain day threshold, you have local tax, employment law, and even IP laws that come into play, and corporations want to avoid local exposure for their
Okay.
employee activities. So we do some advice and counsel along these lines. And again, most employers will limit the amount of time that they will allow their employees to work remotely in other countries on these digital nomad visas.
Makes sense. So let's assume that we have a company, a US company, or maybe an international company even in our audience. By the way, our audience is about 50% the US, 50% Europe. So for this imaginary or real company, would you have any guidance of how to proceed if they're just starting out with their immigration strategy? What to do?
Yeah.
Apart from contact you, obviously.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say just start out with a clear vision, and it takes some work to get to that clear vision. What are your goals? The first thing I ask when I get on a call or a meeting with a company is, what are your goals? What do you want? And what is your timeline? I mean, oftentimes a company will have a timeline that is tomorrow. I want it tomorrow. But then the reality is that, you don't have the business benchmarks in place to even sponsor. I mean, your business isn't at the place where it's going to be able to sponsor a visa for a year or two. Then we start to identify the roles that are most critical to the business, and who needs to be transferred or who needs to be sponsored. And we do the assessment. We consult with the in-house folks, the HR, the executives, and then look at the different types of visas and where the alignment is. We are educating the HR team, we're educating the legal team, we're educating the executive team on immigration compliance. At the end of the day, this is all about compliance. And so it's a risk assessment, right? My duty is to provide the information about immigration compliance, and then the business makes their business decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
We develop immigration policies through key principles. The best policies are dynamic and flex with administration and policy changes. Issues like when to begin green cards, whether to cover dependent family member visa expenses and premium processing expenses, and which positions to sponsor are basic items which should be addressed, because those issues are often questioned by employees, and employers need to be able to lean on a written policy policy. But a well-crafted immigration strategy isn't just about filling positions or, saying to employees yes or no. It's about creating a dynamic and agile workforce, and one that can grow and meet the needs of the organization. And so, it's important to be mindful of that when crafting a policy.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Okay, my final question. Tell our listeners something fun or uplifting, either from your personal or professional life.
Well, I have something to look forward to this weekend. I'm attending the 60th anniversary gala for Finlandia Foundation in Colorado. Yeah, yeah.
Gosh. Okay, say hi to everyone from me.
I will. Yeah. Yeah, the Consul General from LA, Okopeka Salmias, is going to be there. And, my parents live in Colorado, and they are going to be there. I think they were both the president of the Finlandia Foundation in Colorado at one time. And, Juha Mäki-Kallio is here, and he's the honorary Consul General in Denver. And actually, him and I are working together to establish, a business networking group in the Rocky Mountains, maybe a chapter of the Finnish American Chamber of Commerce or something adjacent or similar. There's a memorandum of understanding between Colorado and Finland, and we really want to cultivate around that and draw attention to that while we can.
I love it. I love it. This has been Ceri Koski, partner at WR Immigration in Denver, Colorado. Follow her on LinkedIn, and I will put the link on the show notes. She has fantastic material on all of the things that we discussed, including a 12-part series on corporate and council Q&A sessions with people in and around employment-based immigration. Thank you so much for coming to Deep Pockets, Ceri.
Thank you, Petra. It was a pleasure.
You've listened to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about government and innovation. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe, like, and share our show in your social media. It means a lot to me and to my guests. The wonderful music you heard is by a New Orleans Hall of Fame jazz icon Leroy Jones. Find this and other Leroy Jones tunes wherever you get your music. This podcast, as well as the recording of my audiobook, is done by Chris Elliott at Studio Aguse in south of France. Get in touch with Chris to book studio time in our beautiful village, and why not come and taste the natural local wines from La Robina Winery while you're here. À votre santé!